Hey everyone, it's MK Vanguard. Welcome back to my channel. We're going to be looking at yet another PragerU video, and they are going to educate us about why the left are the real racists. Now, I've tried to make this video. This is like my fourth attempt because I am a stuttering dipshit. So I am so exhausted with this video. I want it to end. I want my suffering to end, guys. So I'm going to make this my last. This is going to be it. I got it this time. We're going to do this. We're going to get through this. We're not going to let PragerU beat us. Let's do this.
Every single day, someone of prominence on the left, a politician, a cable news host, an entertainment figure, accuses someone on the right of being a racist. Here are typical examples. MSNBC host Chris Matthews said this: "The age of Jim Crow managed to find a new habitat in the 21st century Republican Party."
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Comedian Seth Meyers told his late-night audience that Republicans traffic in open racism.
Yeah, no, I'm still on board. Sounds good. Sounds about right, yeah.
Tennessee State Representative London Lamar, a black woman, announced that the entire state of Tennessee is racist, period.
Oh shit, now that is a spicy take. Like, hot damn. But I just imagine how Republicans must feel whenever a Democrat does some kind of hot take like that, when they have a president that talks about how undocumented immigrants are murderers and rapists and compares them to animals. Oh yes. Oh, we can call the Democrats bigots now. Yes.
This was just after she was elected in Tennessee. The left calling the right racist isn't new. It's been going on for decades. Republican presidents Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George Herbert Walker Bush, his son George W. Bush, were all accused of being racist. And
can't imagine why.
Of course, from the left's perspective, racist is essentially Donald Trump's middle name.
No, actually, Donald Trump's middle name is Tiny Hands McGee. You know, just to clarify, it's Donald Tiny Hands McGee Trump.
To call someone a racist is a very serious charge. A racist is a person who believes that one race is inherently superior or inferior to another. It's not intelligence, character, or values that determine an individual's worth. It's his or her skin color. To say that racism is foolish and stupid, not to mention evil, is to understate the case. But according to most Democrats, Republicans are that stupid and that evil.
So this guy is framing this issue of discussing race and racism in its most extreme form possible. That if you hold racist views, or you're someone that is identifying Republicans as holding racist views, then you're basically calling them stupid and evil. Now, obviously, racism doesn't work this way in the real world. There are people who are very overt, very hardline racists that we could call or refer to as evil. But this does not represent, in my view, the majority of people who hold racist views about people of color. You can be someone who holds a certain degree of racial prejudice and be a relatively well-educated, well-read person. And it also does not necessarily mean that you're evil. This is going to the most extreme version of racist and treating it like it is the only version of racist worth talking about.
So let's examine some conservative policies to see if they are indeed racist. If they are, then the left has a valid complaint. And if they're not, then the left is lying.
Intent of the law is not the only thing that matters when we're discussing whether or not a law is racist. A law does not necessarily need to say black people cannot do this, etc., to be racist. Intent and overt language are not the only things that make a law racist. It is also the outcome, but more on that later.
The long-standing conservative opposition to affirmative action is a good place to start. It was Democratic President John F. Kennedy who in 1961 first used the term affirmative action. But affirmative action in the way we think of it now wasn't implemented until 1970, during the administration of a Republican president, Richard Nixon. The theory was that, because of historical discrimination, blacks were at a competitive disadvantage to other races and ethnicities. To erase that disadvantage, standards that most blacks presumably couldn't meet had to be lowered. One could make the case that this policy had some utility when it was first put in place. But that was a long time ago.
Okay, first here, he's trying to play both sides of this issue of affirmative action and say that back when Republicans did it, under the Nixon administration, that it had some utility. But now that affirmative action programs have largely been dropped as an issue for Republicans and has been largely taken up by the Democrats, now it's unnecessary and it's a bad thing. So, about affirmative action, there was a study done, there's several studies on this subject, that the wealth gap between black and white people is huge. White people on average have 7 times the accumulative wealth as black people. Why is that the case? Well, because back when racism was officially on the books in the form of Jim Crow laws and other such policies, black people and black families were not able to accumulate and pass down their wealth to other generations the way white people have been able to. For many generations, black people have not had access to the same quality schools as white people. They have not had access to the same kinds of jobs as white people. They were not allowed to live in certain neighborhoods as white people. All of this had the effect of economically repressing black people, people of color, and families of color. And so they do not have the same kind of cumulative wealth as many white families do. And this continues to be the case today, as we can see in this 7 times number. This is not something that has gone away. In fact, several studies have looked into this, and given current economic trends, it has been estimated that it could take up to 200 years to close the racial wealth gap created by racist policies.
The conservative position is that blacks have repeatedly proven they can compete with anyone without the benefits of lower standards. There are countless examples of black success in every field at every level. The policy is no longer necessary. But
Again, not true. The current wealth gap between blacks and whites could take up to 200 years to fix.
The conservative argument goes further. Study after study shows that, in the case of college admissions, affirmative action hurts more blacks than it helps. By lowering admission standards for blacks and some other minority students, colleges set many of these students up for failure.
He keeps talking about lowering the standards when talking about affirmative action. The issue here is economics. If you are a wealthy white person who wants to get into a nice Ivy League college, you have a greater likelihood of doing so than a poor black person. So affirmative action, in part, seeks to fix that disparity that has been created from the racist policies that pushed black people and people of color into more impoverished living conditions.
They get placed in schools for which they are not prepared. And high black dropout rates confirm this view. How could it be otherwise? If academically unprepared white students were admitted to Ivy League schools, they too would be set up to fail. Conservatives believe blacks and other minorities are every bit as capable as whites of succeeding as engineers, surgeons, policemen, businessmen, lawyers, and college students.
They are not as capable, and it has nothing to do with the fact that they are black or because someone else is white. It's because of the economic effects of racial discrimination. It's because black people have historically not had access to the same rights and services as white people. They have been discriminated in jobs, housing, and education for so long that they do not have the same cumulative wealth that allows many white families and white students to get better jobs, have more economic opportunity, and to get into better schools. This is still a problem today. The framing that he's given here is untrue and unfounded.
And therefore, lowering standards for blacks is unnecessary as well as insulting. Yet for this belief, conservatives are called racist.
Yeah, it is actually kind of racist, because you're implying that if a black student was assisted into getting into a school because of affirmative action, well, obviously he must be less qualified than a white student. This is not how affirmative action works. It's not like you get a -3 points on your SAT scores and then you are lifted by affirmative action into Harvard. That's not what's going on here. Affirmative action serves to work against the racial disparity in income, to give black people a fairer opportunity to get into these higher institutions of learning.
The irony, of course, is that those who accuse conservatives of being racist believe blacks and other minorities are not as capable as whites of succeeding and therefore still need affirmative action.
Correct, because institutional racism still exists. The wealth cap created by racist institutions and racist laws still very much exists.
Almost a half century after it was first implemented. Let's look at another.
Half a century isn't enough time. There are black people alive today that remember a time when they couldn't go to the same schools as their white counterparts or use the same public facilities as their white counterparts. It's not like the most overt racist laws are taken off the books and then everything is immediately better. That's not how this works. Once again, going back to the study I cited earlier, these issues can take a very long time, up to 200 years, to have this racial gap fully bridged.
Another issue where this contrast between conservatives and those who accuse them of being racist is even more starkly drawn. Voter ID.
Oh boy, oh man, okay. PragerU is about to educate us on voter ID laws. Oh man, I'm sure it's going to be very nuanced, and I'm going to get wrecked hard by facts and logic. Let's do this.
Conservatives say America should require every voter to present an ID when voting, just as European countries do to help keep their elections honest.
Man, fuck Europe!
Are all these democracies racist? Of course not. Yet the accusers say that conservatives who support voter ID are racist. Why do they say this? Because, they argue, it's really a ruse to prevent blacks and other minorities from voting, since many of them just aren't capable of acquiring an ID. Can you get more condescending than that?
So there was a study that was published on Vice. They performed this study to see racial breakdowns of voting and how voter ID laws affect communities of color. And this study showed that black people are twice as likely to be disenfranchised by voter ID laws than white people. Also, there was a case recently, not too long ago, in North Carolina, where the legislators there, they took census data of voters and specifically looked at the voting patterns of black people, including what forms of ID they used to vote, and at what points did they vote, and did they take more advantage of early voting. And they used this data intentionally to disenfranchise black people. That is not hyperbolic. This is on the records. The legislators have stated this. I will put links to that below so you can see for yourself. So in many instances, maybe not all, but in some instances, these voter ID laws are intentionally targeting black people. And we can see more examples beyond just voter ID laws also of legislators trying to disenfranchise black voters. We had the example of it in the 2018 Georgia governor race, where many voting locations that were most frequented by black voters were attempted to be shut down. So this is an issue that disproportionately affects black people and black voters. So again, going back to what I said before, that just the wording of the law itself or even the intent of the law is not the most important thing. We also have to look at outcomes, and the outcome of voter ID laws is that more black people get disenfranchised than white people.
You get more condescending than that? Let's be real. You need an ID to drive, to fly, to buy a beer, even to purchase some cold medicines. Whites can do it, but blacks can't?
those things are not rights. Voting is a right protected by the Constitution. It is a right endowed to all citizens. Unless you have a really, really good reason why we should have voter ID laws, it should not be impeded upon. And conservatives will try and throw out these things about how millions of undocumented immigrants are illegally voting. This is not true. This is not substantiated by any data whatsoever. I challenge you to find me data that shows that voter fraud is a massive issue in the United States. You won't, because it's not. I would love to hear a conservative's response if I made a similar argument about owning guns. What if I went to a conservative who supports voter ID laws and I told them I believe that people who want to own firearms should have to get a license to do so? What do you think would be the response? I bet you that they would say, no, you should not have to get a license to purchase a firearm. Owning a firearm is a Second Amendment right and should not be impeded upon. It's the same thing. Voting is the same thing. If you want people to have to get IDs to vote, then you are not treating it as if it is a right.
Tell me again who the racists are? One more example.
Well, clearly me, apparently. I have been wrecked, PragerU. You have wrecketed me hard. Racist confirmed. MK Vanguard.
It's conservatives who push for school choice, which would allow all parents, not just wealthy ones, to decide where their children attend school. Tuition vouchers, charter schools, these are conservative initiatives. Those on the left fight these reforms at every turn.
This is a shifting of the goalposts. There's actually been a growth in racial segregation in the public school system, but instead of addressing that, conservatives will go on to talk about charter schools and vouchers and stuff like that.
It's the left that doesn't trust minority parents to select an appropriate school for their children.
Again, this would be less of an issue if we address the problem of racial segregation and redlining when it comes to public schools, but we're not going to be talking about that in this video, apparently. PragerU is not interested in having that conversation.
Why aren't the people who keep black children in failing schools the racists? At some point, maybe you'll start asking yourself like I did, who's really obsessed with race, the left or the right? And whose policies really hurt blacks? Maybe it's not who you think it is. I'm Derek Green of Project 21 for Prager University.
He got us, guys. It's over. The left has been destroyed. We have been smashed. We all need to pack it up, go home. We just gotta find something new to do. You know, I don't know. It's over. We lost. Oh man. Okay. So that was another PragerU video. Thank you guys for watching. Tell me what else I should discuss. If you want to call me a stupid libcuck, whatever, you can do that. There's a comment section down below specifically for you. I may or may not reply to that. We'll see. We'll see if you can come up with a constructive argument worthy of being addressed. But for the rest of you, tell me what else you want me to discuss in future videos. I'm trying to do this stuff more regularly, and I'm always up for looking at new content and addressing it here on my channel. So, thanks again for watching. Peace.